Hello, it's Eridos again. Been a while since I've done one of these, but I'm going to be doing a toy review here of the Tyco Battletech Axeman. Now then, as you can see, back here I have my original 3050 technical manual, which I got back in 91 before I even knew what a tabletop game was. I picked it up because I liked the pictures when I was a kid. Anyway, reason I have my book up here in the background is so that I can compare the actual toy to the original artwork from the tabletop game. Now then, as you can see, for the most part, a lot of the details from the original artwork are here, but as you can see, Tyco did take some liberties with it. Now then, these liberties were taken with the toy, not only with the toy, but also with the animation version. Because as you can see, it only has one autocannon on its shoulder, whereas the toy has two. The axe handle is much longer on the toy. And the head is a little bit more squat and short on the figure itself. Now then, let's get the book out of the way here so we can do some more comparisons. Yeah, my table has seen better days recently. Now then, let's get a size comparison to show you the scale of this thing. Here is my little pop vinyl Diva and Mecha. And for something a little bit more accurate, here is my Leader Class Sky Shadow. Just give you a sense of scale for this Axeman here. You can see a little taller than a Leader Class figure for a modern toy line, but not as impressive looking as you can probably tell, because as you can see, those legs are really thin, as well as these really thin arms. Again, it's probably because of the plastic content they had to do with this, because remember, these were released in about 94, 95, when Tyco was sort of on a decline because they were just expanding too much for their own good. At least that's the story I keep hearing. I mean, you could probably just look it up for yourself. A lot of sites, like, for example, the Dino Riders fan sites will talk about the downfall of Tyco. And speaking of Dino Rider, it's also one of the problems I've had with this series, because the mechs look cool and all, but the figures that come with them, because of course these have to be piloted, aren't really all that great in comparison to the Dino Riders, because shoulders, head, hips. That's it. And as a kid, I was kind of disappointed by these, because I remember the human Dino Riders actually having knee articulation. I don't know why they didn't try to add knee articulation to these things. But then again, I don't know. Then again, it could have just been a cost cutting measure that they did. Less plastic to mold and whatnot. These figures also do come with accessories. First off, you got the little neural helmet. These are unique to each character, but much like mask helmets, these things are very easily lost. I was lucky enough to find this 100% complete. And of course, they have this little gun that's a little big for this, but it almost looks like it could be the correct size for a G.I. Joe figure. So yeah, the neural helmet is basically allows them to control the mech. Clan mechs, on the other hand, don't have neural helmets, but they have this weird two-barrel gun that looks like a cheap knockoff of a Halo plasma rifle. Now then, it is worth mentioning that, again, due to cost cutting, this mold was used a few times in the toy line. For example, Sashimoro, I believe that's the name of the character, was just a repaint of this. At least for the release they had for the Sloth battle armor. And they also used the same body for Ryder, but they gave him a new head sculpt. So they at least try to make these all look a little different. There was 2 different body molds for the Inner Sphere mech warriors. Whereas the clan, they just used the same mold and repainted all of them the same way. But again, they really only had 2 characters for that entire faction. And the primary character was just used the most often. Didn't help they only had 1 battle armor and 2 mechs. Anyway, the way the pilot... Actually, before I show you how the pilot goes in, let's get a size comparison. That's another problem with Battletech toys from Tyco, is that the scale is kind of askewed a bit. As you can see, this is supposed to be a 50-foot mech. That is a little too big for a human to mech comparison. In fact, here, hold on a second. Let me get Kefka out here, my custom Kefka Mini. I think that is a little bit more of an accurate scale. I mean, sure, Kefka wouldn't pilot a giant 50-foot death mech. Why would he? He would have the power enough to destroy reality itself. Yeah, let's just get Kefka out of here. Don't want to give him ideas. Anyway, the way the pilots go in is that all of them do have opening cockpits. Now then, from what I've seen, because I only had like 3 full-scale mechs before and only 1 with a working cockpit, which is this one, you just snap him right in the cockpit, right there. So yeah, the hinge cockpit actually is a pretty nice touch, but again, it also shows the problem with the scale. The cockpit is supposed to be this front section right here where the clear glass is. He looks out from up here, which again is really too big for the mech. Now then, I've talked a lot about the detail work, I've talked a lot about the figure itself, but let's actually look more at the detail of the mech. And as you can see right here, there's a little sculpted detail right here that actually looks like battle damage. Really nice touch, but it's a shame that it's not picked out with paint. And not a whole lot of paint on this guy to begin with, but then again, the color scheme for the Hausschneider Axeman isn't well known for a lot of paint apps. Black with these really bright yellowish streaks, which again is accurate to the faction. I've seen a lot of people paint their Axemen in this fashion, but you can tell that the stripes, they look really cheaply airbrushed on. They don't really look all that great. And the back is just flat black, just completely flat. No attempt to actually continue this along into the rest of the mech design, which is really disappointing. Now then, there was a repaint of this. In fact, the Battletech line was mostly just repaints for... In fact, it was entirely repaints for Wave 2, where the body was kind of a teal color. The arms were still black. The lasers were teal color. And this was a completely clear safety orange color. And it had black stripes, and the black stripes were actually nice and clean lines. They didn't look like this really cheap spray painted design. So yeah, it looked better deco-wise, but it didn't look accurate show-wise. Now then, again, I pointed out the lasers here. They're nicely painted in that reddish orange color, but you can see there's a little bleed through at the edges there. Also a little bleed through here with the striping. The cockpit is nicely painted because the black actually matches the lines, and it looks like that airbrushing actually is a lot cleaner on this section than it is on the rest of the mech. Again, it actually makes it look like the accurate depiction is in I showed you in the when I showed you the picture from the 3050 guide. And then we of course look here where this side is completely painted. This side, these are the launching missiles, and I'll show you that a little later. Then of course the axe, just pops out of the arm like that. Nicely sculpted. I'll talk a little bit more about it later when I actually get to showing the gimmicks, but articulation. Hips, no knees, arms, no elbows. Yeah, about as much articulation as a Megazord, if not a little less. And considering that we had Beast Wars coming out about this time, which introduced ball joints and universal joints, kind of seems like a letdown in comparison. I mean, again, cost cutting, don't want to make too much plastic for these, but again, this could have done a little bit better with an elbow joint. And as you can see, this is not a joint. It just hangs there. And that's because it has an action gimmick, and that is, there's a little switch right here. It's actually just a little lever, and yeah, it's for a axe chopping gimmick. Would have much preferred if this was actually a solid joint rather than just floppy like this. Which also brings to the problem of the axe. As you can see, the handle is bent. I actually went online. This is a common problem with every single Axeman because the gimmick, when used, will stress the plastic and causing it to bend. As you can see, there's a little stress mark right there at the base. So yeah. Anyway, the missiles. And the missiles are really interesting for Battletech because they introduced interesting launcher gimmicks for a few of the mechs. This one in particular is a rotary gun style where you can just turn this little section here, which is just a bunch of posts. And yeah, it's really hard to turn. I think it's probably just due to the age of the toy, but yeah. You just rotate it and each missile will launch. But I'm a little reluctant to launch these. These feel like rubber tips, which is a nice little safety feature. But as you can see, there's a little stress mark right there. And I am really reluctant to launch these missiles because it feels like there's a lot of stress in here. If they launch, they might break. So yeah, if you have a Battletech toy like this, be very careful with the missiles. They are under a lot of stress. And these shoot pretty far too. I mean, like halfway across a living room. Now then, another really big gimmick for the Battletech toys is that they had battle damage features. Now the clan mechs, unfortunately I don't own a clan mech. Really hard to find them intact, but clan mechs would have a battle damage where limbs would fly off. The Thor, its arms would fly off. The Hunchback would actually have a leg blow off. But all inner sphere mechs, the Bushwhacker, the Mauler, and of course the Axeman here, have exploding heads. Where the cockpit will eject out and all the other bits of the head unit would just fly off. Now then, the Bushwhacker is just the canopy with the flight seat. The Mauler, it's basically like a three-piece headset with flame effects that pop up. I think I can show you that another time. But the Axeman here has a really interesting thing. I'm not going to catch it here. Basically, you hit this little red panel on his crotch. Yeah, that's a weird place for it. And yeah, the whole cockpit launches out like an escape pod, which actually makes this one of the better gimmicks for this line because, again, in anyone who's ever played Mech Warrior or any kind of Battletech game, these things will launch escape pods for their pilots. Sometimes it will be the whole head, sometimes it will just be a capsule that explodes out of the head. And this also makes it so that you don't lose the cockpit too easily, because this is a big, big chunk. I mean, yes, this could crack off and fall off, but for the most part, this cockpit will stay intact. This is a nice big chunk, and it's not very hard to find these. Unfortunately, finding these 100% complete is extremely difficult. Now, if I don't push the head in all the way, the head doesn't look so smushed into the body like the original artwork, but it's really loose in there. It's not really holding in, so you have to kind of press it in there. And it holds really secure. It doesn't really move around too often. So yeah. Nice little representation of the battle mech from the tabletop game, and looks pretty accurate to the show model. But there are issues with this. It's obvious that a lot of plastic was sacrificed. A lot of quality could have been done better. Because this is 95. And in 95, we could have gotten a little better toys. But again, this is near the end of Tyco's heyday. So again, sacrifices were probably made to cut costs. Now, finding one of these is a little difficult. As I said, the head unit is easy to find if you can find it 100% complete. Sometimes you'll just find the body with no rockets and no axe, and sometimes no head. And the pilots are easy to track down. I mean, I found a lot of people just selling the figures in lots, but the neural helmet and the gun, the neural helmet especially, usually will never be found with the figure. So finding one 100% complete like this out of the box is really hard. But if you're a collector and if you like your Battletech, these are actually good figures to track down. Now then, I hope to review another Battletech toy down the line, but it all depends on trying to find those lost parts. So hopefully I'll see you guys again next time, and I'll see you in the next review, hopefully. Later.